After Jon Jones' win this weekend, the heavyweight weight class in MMA remains in a very strange spot. There are three current heavyweights who have a legit case to be the baddest man on the planet, but we haven't and may never see them actually fight each other. In this video, I'm going to talk about these three heavyweights and try to figure out who is actually the baddest man on the planet. So the clear top three, at least in my opinion, are Francis Ngannou, Jon Jones, and Tom Aspinall. I think pretty much every MMA fan out there would agree with that top three. You have Francis Ngannou, who is the lineal heavyweight champion and left the UFC with the belt. You have Jon Jones, who is the current UFC undisputed heavyweight champion. Undisputed kind of in quotes there to some people, because you have Tom Aspinall, who is the defending interim heavyweight champion in the UFC. Now, we'll start off by talking about Jon Jones, who just recorded his first title defense. He has 2 fights up at heavyweight. The first was a 2-minute submission win over Ciryl Gane, and then he had a round 3 KO win over Stipe Miocic. And I think it's clear Jon Jones has looked undeniably great up at heavyweight. He completely made Ciryl Gane wilt and then just completely dominated Stipe Miocic. Pretty much made him look like a punching bag out there. Dominated him on the ground in the first round and then on the feet in the second and third. Even in just those 2 fights at heavyweight, he showcased his wrestling, he has showcased his submission game, his nasty ground and pound, and then has also looked pretty clean on the feet with his striking, especially in the most recent Stipe Miocic fight. I think some people out there may not like this, but I do think the strength of schedule is kind of lacking up at heavyweight. You have Ciryl Gane, who pretty much had no business being in a title fight, right? He was just recently beaten by Francis Ngannou, had 1 win over Tai Tuivasa. Now he's all of a sudden getting the title shot. And then you have Stipe Miocic, who, no disrespect to Stipe, right? Heavyweight GOAT, amazing career, amazing fighter. He really looked like a shell of his former self out there. That's not even close to the prime Stipe Miocic. It's sad, it's unfortunate, but that is the reality. That's Stipe Miocic. Not even touching Stipe, even from like 4 years ago when he fought Francis, just a night and day difference. So that's kind of like the overview here on Jon Jones. Then let's talk about the man who has the second most recent win, that is Francis Ngannou. He finished Renan Ferreira in the first round a little over a month ago. If you're someone who only watches the UFC, Francis Ngannou has gone to the PFL, had a couple of boxing fights against Tyson Fury and then Anthony Joshua, now back in MMA, and he was fighting Renan Ferreira. This was his first MMA fight since January of 2022, so a pretty significant layoff there from MMA. Wasn't sure how he was going to look, and this was by no means a cakewalk matchup here. Renan Ferreira is a massive heavyweight. I mean, really probably the only person that Ngannou's fought who has actually made him look small, has finishing ability, super powerful fighter. We look at Francis Ngannou, he was on a 6-fight win streak before leaving the UFC. We obviously know he won the title with just a dominant KO win over Stipe Miocic. Then he defended it against Ciryl Gane. Really kind of gutted that fight out, went into it with a knee injury on the last fight of his contract, ended up getting the decision win. He had gone on a 4-fight knockout streak to end up, getting that title shot against Stipe. And those 4 fights, that win streak he went on to earn the title shot, lasted 2 minutes and 42 total seconds. Those 4 fights combined did not even last for 3 minutes. And it's not like he was fighting bums, like real competition. Maybe some of these guys not in their prime, but Curtis Blades, Cain Velasquez, Junior Dos Santos, and Jairzinho Rozenstruik. We know Francis Ngannou has the nuclear power, but I think the biggest revelation that we've seen in his last 3 fights, Stipe, Gane, and then Renan Ferreira, has been both his takedown offense and his takedown defense. In the first Stipe fight, Stipe was taking him down, controlling him on the ground, and Francis was getting tired. If he wasn't able to land that big shot early on, when you could kind of extend him, Stipe kind of, showed the hole there and won a very clear decision win. But since then, he has definitely shored up the grappling and actually been able to use it for his own benefit. So the first Stipe title shot was taken down 6 times. In the rematch, he was not taken down a single time and actually landed his own takedown on Stipe. In the Ciryl Gane fight, he was kind of struggling through the first 2 rounds, went down 2, ended up using the wrestling to win the next 3. And then Renan Ferreira, not only was he banking rounds with the wrestling, but took Renan Ferreira down, survived a submission attempt, which was like, a 260-something pound man throwing up a triangle, crazy, jiu-jitsu out of Renan Ferreira, but he takes him down and then just lands some vicious ground and pound. So actually being able to find the finish with his grappling. He is no longer just a KO artist. He has the wrestling. He's gone 5 rounds, 5 rounds with Cyril Gane, 10 rounds in the Tyson Fury boxing fight. So Francis Ngannou firmly in the mix here as the top heavyweight. And then the last guy in contention, the man who was watching that Jon Jones fight in the arena, it is Tom Aspinall. He is 8-1 in the UFC. His only loss was when he blew out his knee against Curtis Blades. He has 2 interim title knockout wins over Sergey Pavlovich and Curtis Blades. Those 2 fights went for a combined 2 minutes and 9 seconds. We've also seen Tom Aspinall go out, showcase his wrestling and submission game. Not something he has to go to a ton, but we saw him land a nice takedown into a submission over Volkov, and then he also submitted Andrei Arlovsky. And at least in my opinion, Tom Aspinall should undoubtedly be fighting for the heavyweight title. Jon Jones versus Tom Aspinall is the fight to make here. And as much as people don't like to hear it, I actually think Tom Aspinall has the better wins at heavyweight compared to Jon Jones. I know Jones has the name of Stipe. He has the win over Cyril Gane. But in my opinion, you actually look at the form of those fighters. Cyril Gane, solid win. Stipe, like I said earlier on, I don't want to keep belaboring the point, but that is not close to one of the best heavyweights in the world. That is not a top 5 UFC heavyweight at this point, if we are being completely honest. You compare that to Tom Aspinall, who has the first round finishes over Curtis Blades, Sergey Pavlovich, and against Alexander Volkov. In my opinion, that is a better resume. Not saying it's some sort of insane resume, right? But I do think it's better than the Jon Jones resume. The question here for Tom Aspinall is he's really never been extended in the UFC. He has not seen a third round. Cardio, is it going to hold up? Also, I would say maybe a little bit hittable, keeps his chin high. It's actually a flaw that he's kind of pointed out himself, says it's something he's working on. So those, I guess, would be the red flags for Tom Aspinall. But now let's actually dive in and talk about who I think the best heavyweight in the world is. Now, I'll start off by saying I don't really think there is a right or wrong answer. Like, if you're going to say Jon Jones, Aspinall, Ngannou, I think all 3 have very viable cases to be viewed as the best heavyweight. Unfortunately, we might never know. But we'll start off here with Francis Ngannou. I think he holds undoubtedly the best heavyweight win out of all 3 of these dudes. He has the dominant and vicious KO win over a 38-year-old Stipe, who, by the way, was coming off of back-to-back wins over DC. Right, great performance out of Jon Jones, finished him in the 3rd round, but that was a 42-year-old Stipe off that knockout loss. Clearly did not look like the same guy. Francis Ngannou was the dude who took him out of the title picture, right? Took the belt off him in dominant fashion. He was avenging his first UFC loss. The problem for Francis here is that he has just not been very active in terms of, his MMA fighting. And you look at Renan Ferreira, I said he wasn't a cakewalk fight, but he is not like a top 5 level UFC heavyweight. And then the Cyril Gane win was like nearly 3 years ago. So there just hasn't been a ton of activity over top fighters. On the other hand, though, he never lost his belt. And, I wouldn't be shocked if he just continued racking up the title defenses if he did not leave the UFC and go pursue boxing. So Francis Ngannou definitely in the mix. Then we have Jon Jones, and I think a lot of people out there do view Jon Jones as the best heavyweight. The win over Stipe was definitely dominant, but like I said, really the shell of Stipe, and it really didn't even look like Stipe posed like any threat in there. He was just so slow on the feet, obviously was dominated on the ground in the 1st round. And I think when you look at Jon Jones, he is going to be the most skilled and well-rounded heavyweight in any matchup, whether it's against Francis Ngannou, Tom Aspinall. I think the issue is he lacks one key trait that is very, very important at heavyweight, and that's just straight up one-punch KO power. It's really never been something in his arsenal. If you can point out like one weakness for Jon Jones, I would say it would just be the power in his hands. His knees, his kicks, his elbows, his grappling, like everything is great, has a great chin. He just does not have that one-punch knockout power, and it's not his fault, but it's just something he does not have, and it also doesn't look like it's in his arsenal up at heavyweight. Sometimes people move up, maybe that power, either gets better or moves up with them. That does not seem to be the case here with Jon Jones, just through 2 fights, right? He did sting Stipe, I think at least one time with the punches, but some of the shots he was landing, if those are coming from a different heavyweight, Stipe is already knocked down and put out. You look at a guy like Francis Ngannou or Tom Aspinall, they can end the fight at literally any second. It takes one shot. They can be getting, worked from the outside, taken down. They can get up. If they land that one singular shot, the night is over for you. So my pick here for the best MMA heavyweight would be Tom Aspinall. I think in terms of recent fights, he has by far the best strength of schedule with those wins over Sergey Pavlovich. Curtis Blades also has the Volkov sub. I think of the three, he is the fastest guy. I don't even think it's close. He's so explosive, so quick. You just don't see that in the heavyweight weight class. I will say, like I talked about, he does kind of lack the extended fight experience. Jon Jones obviously has been 5 rounds a bunch of times, not up at heavyweight, but at light heavyweight. Francis Ngannou has been 5 rounds, also kind of gone deep into a boxing fight. Like I said, I do think an argument can be made for any of the three. It is a blessing that we have such elite talent at the heavyweight weight class. It really would just be a real shame if we never get to see them compete against each other. I want to see the Tom Aspinall, Jon Jones fight so badly. The UFC already botched Jones and Ngannou with being stingy with Jon Jones. I hope they don't do the same here against Tom Aspinall. So we truly might never know who the best heavyweight in the world is. Hopefully, at the very least, we know who the top heavyweight in the UFC is. Obviously, that would be between Tom Aspinall and Jon Jones. Personally, I do think he wins that fight, but who knows? Let me know your thoughts. Who's your pick for the best heavyweight? Is it Jon Jones? Is it Tom Aspinall? Or is it Francis Ngannou? But thank you all for stopping by, and I will see you in the next one.